Warframe 1999 released loads of new stuff, but of course a few broken things came along with it, and one of them being CYTE-09. What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe video coming at you with a nasty sniper nuking sensation known as CYTE-09. His kit revolves around landing juicy headshots to nuke the area, stay out of sight while having infinite ammo. So expect to see ricocheting sniper nuke builds and a weapon platform build. I have 3 builds for you, and one of them is a non-helmet build, because shockingly enough, he doesn't need one. Now, here's a disclaimer. If you suck at aiming, like I do, then well, you might not like him, but I do. However, there's a build that doesn't revolve around his sniper, and it can bring back old school weapons like the Kuva Brahma to be way spammier than running energized munition. Let's start off with his passive. Getting weak point kills, meaning headshots on most enemies, dig shots and back shots on corpus units, grants you a stacking crit chance buff on those weak points. And it goes all the way up to 300%, meaning you have to get 300 kills. And this buff lasts the entire mission. His first ability places down antennas that mark enemies within a 75-degree angle and highlight their weak spots. These weak spots become vulnerable to weak point damage. Weak point damage is pretty much a headshot damage multiplier. This scans enemies up to 60 meters at base range and scales pretty high with range modifiers. And this also increases your punch-through distance. You can place a total of 3 antennas covering your surroundings. Because of its large coverage, it doesn't make you camp as much as other stationary abilities do. The ability is a two-handed cast with a very long and bad animation, so casting speed shards are a must if you're going to use this ability. Also, be sure not to cast it mid-air, as you're going to have an even longer animation. The second ability, Resupply. This has you choose or randomize ammo packs that contain multiple singular or combined elements available through modding to be used on your guns. Not melee, because they're ammo packs. The elemental buffs you get have an elemental damage modifier that scales with strength, and of course, your weapon's mods. And snipers get 2 times the damage bonus. Holding down the ability will bring up a wheel of all the available elements you can choose between. And while you have your element chosen, you can quick tap to refresh and instantly reload your magazine, meaning you can have infinite ammo as long as you have energy. Initially, quick tapping the ability will pick any element at random. The elements you choose will combine with any singular or innate element present on your gun, while also having its own guaranteed status proc. Manually reloading or running out of ammo will clear the elemental damage buff. So use the ability to refresh the element and instantly reload your weapon, or run over the elemental ammo packs found on the ground. Now, these ammo packs can be shared with anyone on your team. The downside is that the elemental damage bonus does not apply to the incarnate form of your incarnate weapons, because that is an entirely unique magazine pool. Another letdown is that you cannot have damage buffs like Roar, Eclipse, and Zata existing with the second ability on him. But here's a cool tip. Bows don't have a traditional magazine, so they technically have a permanent elemental damage buff by picking up regular ammo. Evade, the third ability, grants you invisibility for a set duration, and when the ability runs out, it goes on a cooldown. The cooldown is not affected by any mods. You can extend the duration of the invisibility by getting weak point kills. Pretty much click heads. Also, a cool tip, if your duration exceeds its cooldown, you can lose the invisibility without it going on a cooldown. You also heal when getting kills while invisible. This means you can run Arcane Avenger and Combat Discipline on him for weapon platform builds, and not really for his sniper build because he already has enough crit chance if you're actually going for that particular build. And finally, the Neutralizer, his Exalted sniper. This sniper is also a channeling ability and only drains energy per shot, similar to Ivara's Artemis bow. It has amazing crit values and decent damage, has no innate elemental damage, and deals high puncture damage. It has two firing modes. The primary fire functions like any other sniper, with a zoom function that increases its critical damage. It also builds up combo, giving it a final damage multiplier on every shot. Hitting headshots will ricochet bullets to nearby enemies, and the ricochet travel distance scales with range mods on your Warframe. The ricochet damage is considered weapon and ability damage at the same time. And this is the main way he nukes with his sniper. So this means you need to hit heads all the time. It can be hard if you suck at the game, but the alternate fire does help out, as it is a grenade launcher that deploys a cold zone, hitting enemies with max cold stacks, freezing them in place, increasing your critical damage because of the cold procs, and making enemies easier for headshots because they're frozen. This cold zone does persist for 5 seconds and continues to apply cold procs. And to use this alternate fire, you need to be unscoped. Strength increases the weapon's base damage, so modding it for a lot of strength gives you more than enough base damage to mod the sniper with other beneficial mods to enhance your damage. And with all of that, you now know how he functions. So let's take a look at how I've built him. And in this section, I'll go over the gameplay loop, Archon Shards, and the mods used, along with the Syenrgys. For the Archon Shards, I have 3 red Tau Forge Shards for the strength increase, and 2 yellow Taus for the casting speed, because you do not want to let animations shine. Alright, let's take a look at the gameplay loop with CYTE-09. You already know what my Archon Shards are, and I'll be demonstrating the non-helminth build. As you can see right here, not a single helminth ability. Now, the update also came with insanely good arcanes. One of them being Arcane Crepulsar. This grants you strength and a final critical damage multiplier on all your weapons. Of course, in max rank is where you want it to be, because you get 30% strength and 3 times critical damage. Really big, because all of this is active while you're invisible. That's the only condition. Of course, you want to activate your 4th ability while you're invisible. So starting off any fight, you want to make sure you trigger your focus school, which will be Mad Rye in this case. So 2 Void Slings, and you get that 40% strength increase for 20 seconds. Drop your first ability, go invisible, pick the element, which will be viral in this case, press your 4th ability, and then boom. Click heads. Now, this is not a fully scoped sniper. You can go all 8 times to get a bigger critical damage boost, but of course, the zoom is a bit too much. You don't necessarily need to have it fully zoomed. I'm using viral as the elemental damage bonus because it can prime everything with the ricochet. And the main modded element is going to be corrosive for the raw damage. So we have corrosive and viral. And when you're unscoped, the alternate fire will trigger the cold procs and the viral procs, priming everything. You see how the ricochet hits everything and procs its viral and hunter munitions right there. And I'm easily maintaining my invisibility because I'm getting headshot kills. And as long as you're in the mission getting headshots, you can maintain your Crepulsar and build up your passive to give you more critical hit chance. And here's the thing, you don't need to reload your weapon manually. Just run over the ammo or just drop an ammo pack. You instantly reload your bullets. Onto the build, we got the Sniper Mantings. In the Arcanes, Energize for the energy management, and Arcane Crepulsar for the critical damage and strength increase while invisible. Now, in the Aura, you have a few options. You have Corrosive Projection for the armor strip. This, of course, does increase your damage overall. Deadeye does increase your sniper's base damage, but not necessarily needed. It's not that big of an increase. But we do have a new that is pretty nice for CYTE-09, and that is Worthy Camaraderie. This increases your crit chance on weak point. Pretty nice to have, because the aura comes with a V polarity originally. But you can switch between Corrosive Projection, Worthy Camaraderie. But for better damage, Corrosive Projection does outperform Worthy Camaraderie. In the Exalted, PSF for the foot maxing. Moving on to the strength increases. You already know that we have Archon Shards. That's why we're getting that 145% strength. I'm going to be going with a maxed Blind Rage here. This does hit our efficiency and also increases our strength. We don't have to worry too much about efficiency because of our energy maintenance. This is going to be our strength mod that affects pretty much everything. But to boost my 4th ability even more, giving it a bit more base damage, I'll be running with Precision Intensify. This gives my 4th ability 90% strength. Looking at our 4th fourth ability multiplier, we get a 4.18 times base damage. That's pretty huge. Duration with Prime Continuity. This is going to be our only duration mod for this loadout. Duration is very important to maintain his third and his first ability. But of course, his first ability does have better initial duration, unlike the third ability. Again, as you know, you can extend the third ability's duration by getting headshot kills. Now for some energy maintenance, I do have Prime Flow for the large energy pool and Equilibrium for the health and energy conversion when you pick up the orbs. Now the initial ricochet range is at 10 meters, and I'm increasing that to 17 meters with an auger reach and a stretch. And no, Archon stretch does not work if you use the electric damage buff on his second ability. Think of it like Toxic Lash. And the last slot is for survivability with Rolling Guard. Just in case you get hit with a status effect, whatever, you dodge roll, cleanse it pretty easily. Or what you could do is run Prime Redirection. Either way you want, as my main sentinel is going to be the Worm Prime. And moving on to the Neutralizer build, since we already have a lot of strength, I don't need to mod it for base damage. And that's why I went with a faction damage multiplier, crit chance, crit damage, elemental damage over here, multi-shot, hunter munitions, and some fire rate. And as you saw earlier, I was demonstrating all of that with the wrong faction. Let's see how this looks with the proper faction. Go invisible, fourth ability, get viral. Big damage. And that's what happens when you run the proper faction damage mod. Let's take a look at the alternate build, which replaces his first ability. And I went with Nourish. Now, for those wondering, why don't you keep the first ability, replace the third ability, and run Shade for the invisibility? Unfortunately, every time you shoot with his fourth, it counts as a weapon shot and does not keep you invisible. That would have been really, really damn good. We go invisible. That's it. We're visible again. We do not stay invisible with the Shade using his fourth ability because it counts as a weapon. So now with Nourish and running corrosive damage on the weapon, we have viral corrosive. That means I can put any other element on the weapon. We do get pretty good damage with this build as well. So Void Sling, activate our Nourish, go invisible, and we can pick any other element we want. And this one, you don't even have to use your alternate fire anymore. As you can see, free crit damage, priming everything, slowing them down, so making it easier for headshots. You do lose the punch through when you don't use the first ability, but the weapon does have innate punch through. You can add on to that punch through by using Prime Shred. Now you have 4.7 meters of punch through with that ricochet. And that's the only different thing that you need to add when you're using the Nourish loadout. Now taking a look at the Nourish build, since you already have an energy multiplier coming from Nourish, I don't need to run Arcane Energize. So I went with Multi-Efficiency to have a larger duration. So I'm adding onto that duration with Constitution instead of running Equilibrium. And the build is pretty much the same thing. And of course, Corrosive Projection for the armor strip. And the build shreds pretty well. And now finally, moving on to the weapon platform build. Now, this one, you can run any other weapon you want. And the helmet ability I decided to go with this one is Breach Surge. If you kill an enemy with that Surge Spark, it will send that Surge Spark to the nearest enemy, hitting heads. Now, this allows me to move around the map, hitting heads without necessarily targeting their heads, which does extend the duration of my evade. So, for example, I can put my first ability down. I can kill enemies normally with my Occucore here. Right? But if I want to extend that duration even more and increase my damage even more, Breach Surge. There we go. That's the type of damage we're dealing. And the cool synergy here with Occucore and his second ability, I don't necessarily need to drop an ammo pack anymore, because Occucore has its own reload mechanic, and it reloads before the magazine fully replenishes. So it doesn't count as a full reload, and I can maintain my elemental damage buff for pretty much the whole mission. So let's take a look at that build real quick. The difference here is that I'll be running Combat Discipline. You kill an enemy, you lose health. And this counts damage done to you, which will then trigger Archon Avenger, that flat crit. At the same time, as you're invisible, Evade heals you. So this is going to be your heal source as well. And this heal is from any kill. Doesn't require a headshot. And because we're not necessarily going to be getting headshots all the time, and the third ability might run a duration pretty early, I stacked as much duration as I could with Narrow-Minded, Constitution, Prime Continuity, and Augur Message. And keeping it at slightly base range with Stretch and Augur Reach to counteract the negative duration from Narrow-Minded. The first ability still has a massive radius, and Breach Surge has at least 19 meters. And we have decent energy management with Equilibrium. And this is the Occucore build. Cascadia Flare as the base damage multiplier. I am running heat damage with my second ability. That's why I'm able to trigger this. And on the weapon, I'm running Viral Electric. Don't forget your faction damage mod, multi-shot, Sentient Surge. This is the only way this weapon becomes good. Without this, the weapon is doo-doo, so make sure you have this. I don't need to run Crit Chance mod because I have Arcane Avenger on CYTE-09, and when I get headshot kills and give me Crit Chance on weak points. I have all that Crit Chance from that setup. And you only need to run Prime Target Cracker for the critical damage. Galvanized Shot for even more base damage and increases our status chance. Ruinous Extension for the increase in beam length. And that's pretty much the build. And don't worry, if you do not have the Occucore with that augment, you can definitely use a kit gun. In this case, I'm using the Gaze kit gun, built from the Gaze, Haymaker, and Splat Loader. We have insane amounts of crit chance, good crit damage, but why the Gaze kit gun? Because kit guns have this arcane called Pack Seeker. On headshot kill, you fire projectiles similar to Breach Surge that seek out nearby heads. So you can headshot with this. And you combine this with Breach Surge, well, you're going to be dealing a lot of damage. So let's demonstrate that. We have our first ability giving us that juicy weak point damage multiplier. We go invisible. We have the heat damage. Breach Surge. Yeah. Reload the weapon. I accidentally reloaded with cold. Oh my goodness. There we go. So yeah. If you don't have the Occucore with that augment, you can definitely build yourself a kit gun. Unfortunately, you do not have infinite ammo with this one. You do have to press the second ability to reload here and there. But as you can see, the damage is quite substantial. And the only thing you probably need to change is slightly drop the duration, put Prime Flow for a larger energy pool, or run Arcane Energize if you don't care too much about the additional crit chance that you get from Combat Discipline and Avenger. For the companion, I highly recommend running the Worm Prime because it has a large shield pool to run Reinforced Bond, and it prevents a status effect. Pretty simple. The Nautilus Prime also has a large shield pool, but it pulls in enemies and makes things a bit annoying to hit. The build is simple. All of this here is for survivability and to maintain the shields. Now, because you don't need healing yourself, you can run Accelerated Deflection to increase the Sentinel's shield regen, because if the Sentinel does lose shields, you do lose a little bit of the fire rate. Also, here's another tip to maintain the shields on my Sentinel. Remember how the second ability counts as a reload? Yes. With Reinforced Bond, that reload counts as refreshing the shields on your Sentinel, so you can maintain that fire rate bonus at all times. So you shoot, you press your second ability, it reloads. Notice how my Sentinel's shields went up. They're still going up. And over here, I have Tenacious Bond for the critical damage increase. And you can easily upkeep that crit damage running a Volcox. The reason I'm running this weapon is because it's a primary weapon. Primary weapons can slot in Vigilante mods, increasing the chance of getting a higher critical tier. And with the critical delay, I easily have that crit damage bonus right there with Tenacious Bond. Anyway, folks, this is CYTE-09 and the 3 builds that you can use for him. Hopefully you enjoy nuking with headshots. Anyway, that has been it for me. I do hope you've enjoyed and learned something from this video. And if you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching. As always, a peace. Bye-bye now.